Tom. One fine day, out in the middle of a field, there was a boy named Johnny. Johnny was a rather pranky boy. He liked to prank. Johnny was a very trickster-esque boy who liked to pull pranks around the town. So what he would do every now and then is he would go up to the local baker and then fill the bread with bees. How he did that, I don't know. I don't even know where he got the bees from. Johnny was also a beekeeper. But that's nor here or there. One day, Johnny was strolling through town and he saw a girl, the girl of his dreams. And he was like, oh man, how do I get her to notice me? So Johnny decided that he was going to prank this girl and use that as kind of like an icebreaker to be like, so, how are you? So then Johnny went on to bring this girl a cake, but the cake had bees in it. And when she cut into the cake, bees poured out and stung her, but she was allergic to bees, and Johnny realized that it was wrong to prank everybody, so he rushed her over to the hospital. Meanwhile, everyone thought that was a prank. So Johnny brought her to the only person who actually trusted Johnny, who was also happened to be a doctor.
Bingo!
Monkey Island fan, thank you for joining the members of the Toys Party. Enjoy your 10 glass in your emotes. Mwah. And that's 450, folks. Anyway, so she decided it was so then Johnny, so the girl was cured by Johnny's doctor friend, who was very happy to help. Johnny stayed by the girl's bed all day and night, hoping that she would desperately hoping that she would open her eyes so he could apologize. She opened her eyes and he apologized. And then there was happiness and joviality to be had by all. So then when the girl woke up, he apologized, but then the girl had no memory. So, she didn't even know her own name. They didn't even know the name to begin with. I didn't even mention her name. And it was, really bad for all. So Johnny spent as much time with her as possible, not doing any pranks and becoming an upstanding citizen. So that way he could, A, win the key to this girl's heart. So then days went by and he was hoping to win her heart and hopefully get her memories back. Because he felt guilty and didn't prank anybody else. Unless it was to be learned by all. But then, suddenly, the giant Potato King came to invade town, looking for his daughter. His daughter being the woman who had lost her memory. Nobody knew of this. Johnny was the best at his job of keeping this girl safe, but the Potato King was still desperately looking for his daughter. He terrorized the town, in hopes of looking for her. And Johnny was not going to have that, becoming an upstanding, non-pranking citizen. So Johnny showed the bees to her, and memories of bees caused her to go into a panic. Suppressed memories of her being stung by bees. And then, when we end up, she gets into a panic, the Potato King hears her cries and recognizes her cries of, oh no, she is in bees trouble. So the Potato King destroys the town and runs off in the direction of, ran to her as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Johnny was trying to calm down the girl and saw doom looming over the horizon. He picked up the girl and carried her off from her father, the Potato King, whom nobody knows is the Potato King. Then they ran off into the woods together, where they could be alone and away from bees. The Potato King had destroyed everything that Johnny ever held dear. He realized that maybe the best way to get back, so then they ran off into the woods. Hopefully to get away from there. The girl calmed down and Johnny explained what was going on. He decided to be truthful in the matter, in the fact that, he was the reason she had no memory. She got mad and ran off in a huff. She also still has no name because I haven't given her a name yet. So then Johnny chased after her, incredibly guilty of the fact that there was incredibly guilty of the fact that he was the cause of her amnesia and whatnot, and guilty for the fact that he tried to win her heart without telling her the truth. So then he chased after her, but only found trouble when a rogue elf jumped down from the trees and was like, I saw what you did to her. You are a no good man. And Johnny goes, but I can change. And then they started to fight. And the dog was, the elf had a dog. that fought fiercely. But then when Johnny saw the dog, he remembered his own dog and was like, no, I cannot harm other dog. I cannot harm other dog. Then Elf said, then you will perish, and dog bit Johnny on leg. And Johnny fell, passed out. Then Amnesia Girl came back and was all, hey. All right, so then she came over to him, to the elf, and was like, no, he may have lied to me, but he was best thing that happened in life. And then the elf was all like, but he hurt you. I saw the whole thing. And she was like, wow, you're a creepy stalker, man. But as an elf, I am immediately attracted to you. You being the elf. I am immediately attracted. So while Johnny was unconscious, Elf Boy and Amnesia Girl immediately bone. Johnny wakes up and sees that they are post-coitus. And is like, what? No! And Amnesia Girl is like, I like you like a brother. And Johnny's like, no! And then, so Johnny ran away, saddened by all of this. He found, wandering through the forest, he found the Potato King, who was, destroying everything. So then, he found the Potato King, and the Potato King is like, you! I know you! Grabs him by the throat and says, where is my daughter? And because of anger, rage, and jealousy, Johnny told him about Elfman and made up story about how Elfman gave daughter amnesia. So then Potato King went off after them, but a tinge, there was a twinging in Johnny's heart. Poor Johnny. He could not go on himself knowing that he had lied about the love of his life to the evil Potato King, and the elf did not deserve that. He was only trying to help, even though he was a stalkery stalker. So Johnny rushed back to the aid of Elf and Girl, only to find that Elf was unconscious and Girl was held captive by Potato King. So then Potato King. So fierce battle began between Johnny and Potato King. Potato King used his potato powers to make the potato masher mallet, which knocked Johnny into oblivion, therefore taking daughter away. When came to, Girl was gone and Elf woke him up. When Elf woke him up, Elf was all sad that Girl was gone, but Elf saw potential in Johnny for being able to beat him. Johnny needed to be able to stop him, but not in his current physical state. As a trickster, so then they needed to train in both body and mind. So the elf took Johnny back to Elf Village, where he would be able to train in physicality as well as non-physicality. Whisper and Rain, thank you for joining the members of the Times Party. Enjoy your tinted glass and your emotes. Mwah. The training regimen was rough and tumble. Parents aren't gonna be happy with that grade. The training was vigorous. It included things like Johnny swinging through vines in tree, doing push-ups with many people on his back, and running. A lot of running through the jungles of the elves. When all was said and done with Johnny's when training was done, Elf said, I have trained you all that I can, but it's still not enough to fight Potato King. Go to Snowy Mountains and speak to the dwarf. He will be good for train. So, set off on adventure did Johnny with a backpack full of elven goods and elven quickness. With the swiftness he learned from the elves, he was able to dodge many a thing that came his way. So with his swiftness, Johnny was able to dodge many a thing, including, boulders by going up the mountain and whatnot. When he got to the top, he met Dwarf, the lone dwarf atop of Dwarf Mountain. Dwarf the dwarf was impressed with his elven speed and said, "Ach, did Elf send ya? Then I'll be the one to train ya in the art of physical strength and combat." So the art of combat was waged, including many sword training techniques. axe training techniques, spear training techniques, bows and crossbows, as well as doing some powerlifting with boulders to increase that physical strength. So the strength training definitely helped. When all was said and done, Dwarf the Dwarf said, told him to go seek the halfling of Halfenshire more calm. And so he moved on, and using his newfound strength, going through Morden Dorden Sheer to Hobbidorven Halflingdom, he was able to get through the many traps with his pure strength. He was able to get through all the tricks and traps of the sneaky halfling. And when he finally got there, the halfling was all like, "Hey, you did pretty good getting through all these. Through all this. So why don't we go ahead and give you, I'll give you some of my training then. I'll teach you how to make the best pranks and traps ever." But this is where Johnny decided not to, because Johnny swore off. So Johnny vowed off of tricks and traps and pranks ever since he gave the love of his life amnesia, having only met her at first sight. And the halfling was all like, "Hey, you know, it's not all bad if you." So then Johnny was not. The halfling told him to not worry about it as long as you use your tricks and traps for good purposes. Then you will not be a bad. And you will be able to defeat the Potato King and be loved by all and still be able to do what you love. As long as everything is, as long as you just remember to not be a bad, it will be a good. So good. Which convinced Johnny, and they got to trick and trap training, which included things like pitfalls and smoke bombs and caltrops. And a whip. And by the end of it, Johnny had become Catwoman. And then Johnny was able to do what he did and become the greatest warrior of all time, also known as Catwoman. It is for to be the greatest fight between Johnny and the Potato King. And Johnny, verily... So then, making his way back, he used all of his knowledge to get to the Potato King, dodging all of the heavy guards in his path, knocking away all the traps that come his way, and hiding and stealthily moving along to be able to make his way to the throne room. And when he did it, he got to the Potato King. Johnny made it to the Potato King, who was like, "So you finally came. My daughter has been expecting you." And then his daughter did come out with strange helmet on head and did not talk at all and immediately attacked. And Johnny was like, "No, I cannot attack love." And then the fierce battle between Johnny and daughter was a go. Daughter, Johnny couldn't do a thing against. Okay, so they did battle. But Johnny was very, determined to not hit daughter, because he still loved. Obviously, though, it was the helmet, but Johnny was too much of a musclehead and a dumb to not realize that. So he figured out the plans to get the helmet off her, by doing a famous elven judo kick, which he learned from the dwarf. So, he had to get her in the right position. So then, got him in the right position, and made it so he was able to take the helmet off, but the helmet was stuck. So he used the dwarven judo kick and knocked the helmet clear off. This brought her back to normal, but also gave her amnesia back. So she still didn't know who exactly she was. The Potato King was mad and pissed off, so he started to attack. So then the Potato King was mad and he pulled out his giant masher mallet, and thus began the final the fierce battle between Johnny and the Potato King began. This was the final battle. And Johnny knew what had to be done. Using all of his combat. Bingo! Clay Dogs, thank you for the 13 months of being a lead member of the Times Party. Enjoy your tentacle eyes and your emotes. Mwah. Using all of his fighting knowledge, he was able to stave off the attacks of the Potato King. All right, so then Johnny and the Potato King were evenly matched. Johnny was about to deliver the final blow, and suddenly, and then they were evenly matched. Just as Johnny was about to deliver the final blow, the Potato King stripped his skin and became the Mashed Potato King, unable to be harmed by regular attacks. Johnny was in a real pickle here. Because of his squishy body, he was unable to do any damage to him using... So then, it was at a loss. Suddenly, all of the memories flowed back to daughter. So, suddenly, the daughter's memories all come back. And, she knows of all the stuff that has been going on from before and from the now. Especially since the bees. And, the daughter was like, hey! Johnny, the name's Anne. So then, Anne was like, I know my father's weakness. You know how I'm allergic to bees? Well, he's allergic to bees. And Johnny was like, oh, but I gave up pranking, so I left my bees at home. And then there was struggle. Johnny fought hard to try to be able to survive. So Johnny was just trying to survive over and over again against the Mashed Potato King's attacks, but he knew his weakness, but had no way to get his bees. How would he be able to get his bees? So then finally, the time came and the Potato King was about to deliver the final blow onto Johnny. Broken and bruised. But then who would save him? Now, suddenly, a swarm of bees came down and started going after the Potato King, who was So a swarm of bees came down, and the Potato King was dodging them expertly. But Johnny was like, but who? He looked up and saw that Elf had come back with his bees from his house. And Johnny was shocked because Elf was not friend, but they had become friend. So Johnny was shocked that the Elf came back, and the potato. Then she did it. They held him down while the bees went and stung the Potato King. And the Potato King was like, gah! And his health meter was like, and everyone was like, oh God, the Potato King is finally being defeated. What will Am do now? So Johnny was in a predicament now because even though the king was being trapped and stung by bees, he was still powerful enough to fight back. But he didn't have his weapon, he was just flailing with his fist. Suddenly, Anne came over and put her hand upon Johnny and handed him the great potato masher of mashing might of the Potato Kings. And both Anne and Johnny lifted the so both Anne and Johnny lifted up the Potato King's mighty mashing mallet and brought it down hard upon him. Unable to do anything because of the bees, the Potato King was crushed, mashed, and once and for all. So Johnny and Anne vanquished the potato. Go get the Chaos Emerald. And so peace was brought to the plains, but with his dying breath, the Potato King thus said upon him, my rule was out of fear, but only for the preservation of our species. Species. So Johnny and Anne complete the trials of Soliana. But they were unsure what they meant by that. Suddenly, upon the kingdom of the humans, leaders from the Dwarven, the Elven, and the Halfling communities came and began destroying everything. And meanwhile, the two humans and Elf and Dwarf and Halfling, the characters, not the entire races, were all appalled by this. But because of the humans' actions, the Potato King's actions, I should say, all the other races thought humans were dumb and bad and dumb, with the exception of So, all-out war broke out between all the races. And Johnny, the lovable trickster, had to prove to them that humanity wasn't all bad and it was just the one guy. So while the attacks were going on, Johnny asked elf, halfling, and dwarf to gather the council of halflings, elves, and dwarfs. Not in a very intelligent way, though, by sending the halfling to the... Courage will be tested here. Fight the enemy's life or death battle. He sent the halfling to the elves, the dwarf to the halflings, and the halfling to the dwarfs. So, yeah. Which, as you could tell, went very well. Because they were all good friends, but they didn't like humans. So Johnny went there. And then bees happened. And then, bees happened with woman whom I love. She's still kind of cold to me, though, because of the whole bees incident. But you gotta take time. Let the thing you hate warm up to you. So then, then Anne was like, oh, Johnny, I'm not cold to you anymore. I know now that I am the leader of humans, and I must be the one to reconcile with these guys. Oh, that was also after Johnny. So then Anne stepped forward before the council of elves and halflings and dwarves, and was like, hey, we need to not be attacking humans. Instead, she was like, we should at least try to come together. And the councils were like, you know what? We're gonna put you on probation here. So basically they're on probation, and they're all living together in each of their kingdoms with ambassadors from each kind of being there, and they're like, hey, that's good. Everything's normal now, right? Wrong. The mole people emerged from the ground, stating that it was their time. Potatoes were what was suppressing them. The mole people emerged from the ground and said, we are going to take the kingdoms now. And it was up to elf, dwarf, halfling, and so they armed up. And so it was tested them. They took up arms and fought against the mole people. The mole people who are trying so very hard to conquer the surface world. But what possible reason could the mole people have? So that was their cause now, was to find the motives of the mole people and see if they could change their mind peacefully instead of trying to kill them. So by using the halflings and Johnny's stealth moves, they managed to infiltrate the mole headquarters to try and listen in on the motives of the mole king, the grand underking who commands all the mole people. They listened closely to the Mole King's motives as he was monologuing to himself, saying things along the lines of, we've dug tunnels for the mole people will rule the upper world for the sake of the fact that we hated being so dark. So with the mole people being mole people that they are, Johnny, Anne, and the three nameless the three people who are named after their races take to the Mole King's throne room to defeat the Mole King and put an end to the invasion. But first, Johnny's all like, dude, we could just like share the surface. And the Mole King's like, no, we must be the ones to rule over all of it, and you will be pushed underground for generations to come. So the five went in and began fighting with the Mole King. The Mole King was very powerful, using his giant claw gauntlets to stave off any attack, and his hardened back shell, which apparently he has from spending years underground. And the Mole King struck down two of them. Who the two? Who knew? It was the halfling and the elf. But Anne managed to smuggle in the potato masher mashing, which cracked the shell that was on the back of the Mole King. And the Mole King vulnerable, the dwarf able to stick his sword straight into his back. So, finally, Johnny was able to kill the Mole King, whose back was exposed after the hammer. And so, the Mole King was destroyed, and peace and everlasting life, happiness went throughout the land, and Johnny got married to Anne. And he was, I guess, the right-hand man because she was royal blood.